Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're from. This is Julianne from Razorleaf, and welcome to our webinar series on unpacking 3D experience. I'm joined here with my two colleagues, Kip Speck and Michael Craffey. And we're going to take you through, this is part three, or actually maybe even part four of a series that Kip has been taking us through about using the different pieces of 3D experience. And today we're talking about integration with 3D experience to an MES system. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kip.
Thank you very much, Julian. As Julian said today, we're going to talk about integration from 3D experience to MES and a couple of the technologies around it. And for this presentation, I'm going to use a video. In the past, I've had some issues with delays and things like that. So today's presentation will be run from a video. At the end, we will pause and take questions and things like that. So if you do have questions I need to show you in a system or something, it's possible we could do some of that. So with that, thank you very much for joining. And from here, we'll go ahead and start it off. Thank you for joining the webinar series, Unpacking the 3D Experience. Production integration from 3D Experience to MES, the GoPro Mount. In the previous webinars, we covered the different phases of the product development from ideation to requirements and finished at prototype, where we used the 3D Experience derived output to generate step files. In today's webinar, we will finalize the GoPro Mount and release it to production using the 3D Experience platform, a hub and spoke application to publish the EBOM and NBOM to iBase-t Solumina. Before we begin the demonstration, let's look at the interfaces and the flow of events. When the engineering item is released, an event trigger is instantiated in 3D Experience platform. This event instantiates a task plan in Clover that has defined tasks to execute based on the release of an EBOM. The task plan will launch all predefined tasks and track the execution and status. The task plan is structured to get the EBOM items, derived output, and attribute information and create a new revised EBOM and NBOM in Solumina, as well as add derived output to the catalog items. Here we see the differences between a point-to-point architecture and the hub and spoke architecture. Of note, you'll see the number of connections for the same systems is more than double between the two. The different structures both have pros and cons. We won't cover all of them, but we'll talk about some high-level ones. The point-to-point is easily configured and does not require additional architecture or software, but scaling, maintaining, and managing the connections, events, and errors becomes very difficult in a point-to-point. The hub and spoke scales more with being able to add new systems, apps, processes without interrupting other systems. Upgrading individual systems is more manageable because you only need to update code that changes in the hub libraries to support the new requirements, especially when not all systems can be upgraded at the same time. Hub and spoke also has the benefit of having a dev or test environment connected to the production to simulate testing for new business processes. In the scalability of the point-to-point, adding a new system internally or from acquisition is very complex and difficult when determining all the endpoints affected and where the events that need to be incorporated. The synchronization of data between systems means you need to ensure that the system of record is a source of truth and ensure that data stomping is not happening from system to system. When you use a point-to-point, data and file synchronization may take hours or even days. This creates a challenge that is better handled with a hub when additional servers or services can be added as needed. Here we see that upgrading a system is possible without having to affect the other up or downstream systems. There are instances where one or more applications are no longer supported with older API calls, or other interfaces that may prevent a point-to-point upgrade. Whereas a hub and spoke can continue using older libraries where needed and transform data and events by defining new tasks and new plans. Here we see the successful event being triggered by the PDM system. With the release of 3D CAD, PDM sends the 3D data to PLM. PLM sends the data to 3D to the supplier, then to the MES. PLM also sends attribute data, BOM information, and other information to MES, then to the ERP. The ERP is then triggered to send information to MES and then to the supplier. Let's hope it all worked out without errors. Now let's look at the same events, but what happens when there is an error sending the data from ERP to the supplier and MES does not get the updated data? Errors like this can cause huge impacts on manufacturing if they're not aware that the step file or the 3D data was not updated. Suppliers also may not have the material change that was part of the ERP data sent with the new revision. Here we have the hub and spoke that is triggered from one single event. The release of the PDM that triggers a task plan and tasks in the hub. The hub is then responsible to copy the 3D data from PLM data, ERP data, to the appropriate systems. The hub becomes the coordinator of events and all the system data and error messages or anything else that is required. Here we see that there's an error in transmitting the ERP data to the MES. Since the hub is responsible to all error handling, alerts can be sent out and reprocessing of specific tasks can be executed without having to rerun the entire event structure over again and determining where it failed, what system did it fail in, or backing up. Maybe you released a large assembly, you have to undo it and re-release again. The hub allows you to reprocess that information without redoing all that. Today, we're using Clover, Razorleaf's Clover platform, and one of the applications inside of there is called Integrate It. We'll be focusing on that for our demonstration. We will see the flow of events from 3DX to Clover. We'll see that from an engineering item, an event is triggered. It sends a task plan to Clover. Clover launches tasks. And from the task, all the EBOM, NBOM is created in Solumina, and all the files are created as catalogs in Solumina as well. So let's take a look at the demo. Here in 3DEXPERIENCE, we are using the engineering release widget, and here we have the assembly, and we have all of its components, the subassembly with its components, and then the parts underneath it. So we will release it in 3DEXPERIENCE. This will trigger the event in 3DEXPERIENCE, which will call or instantiate a task plan in Clover. So as soon as this gets released, we'll switch over to Clover and we'll watch it get created. Now that my assembly and all of its components are released, let's look at Clover. When I look at Clover, these are all my tasks that have been created. I'm going to refresh my view and I'll see that a new one has been added here. Now you'll notice that this task that is created was created from a task plan, and we can take a look at that later. But that task plan that was defined for release of events in 3DEXPERIENCE has all of these tasks that need to run. So in Clover, because it's a hub and spoke, I can watch all the events happen, and each one of the items is defined based on what I want to have happen or the company wants to have happen based on the release. Now, sometimes it may be that we want to send information to ERP. We may want to gather information from multiple systems, combine them together, and distribute them different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh again, and I'll notice that my chain of events, my different tasks are processing as they should. And if I look at each one of them, I can see that new bomb, this one completed, and I'll see all of the input parameters, output parameters, all the information that was needed to process this task. If I look at, I have a login method, it completed, I see the user, I can have a password, and that can be encrypted and things like that as well, output parameters as well. So I'm going to go ahead and select my last one, and I'm going to go ahead and select refresh, and I'll see that now the creating the Solumina items in Solumina is in progress. So I can see the status of everything as it goes along. Any errors or messages, things like that that have happened, I'll be notified by it. And if need be, I can come back in here and say, if this one specific task failed for whatever reason, maybe a system disconnected, or maybe there was a network error, whatever it is, right? I can come to this specific one and I can say resubmit task. I could also do it on the entire structure if I want, because it's not, the system's not sending me an event for every file. And because Clover is aware, PLM aware, it knows that it's an assembly. So go get all these subcomponents. So it's built into the code or the library to go and get all the information, the subcomponents, children, drawings, reference data, derived outputs, attribute information. It gets all that payload on its own. So it doesn't wait for the system to say every time a file is released or a component's released, go trigger something every time. But because it was an assembly, I can say release a bomb. So now let's go look at Solumina. So I'm going to apply my filter. And there's my new bill of material. Now, when I created the E-bomb in Solumina from Clover, it automatically created my M-bomb. There's my M-bomb. So if I take a look at it, I'll notice that there's my structure and there's the subassembly that was part of it. I can click on the subassembly and I see all the information. Down here, all the documents were copied over from 3DEXPERIENCE using Clover because of the one single event that said release this assembly. It knows to go ahead and get all of the subcomponents or files. Maybe there's a CGR, a step file, things like that that are part of the payload that need to come to MES. So it knows to do all that. And that's all defined in the task plans that are created. So now here I have all that information. And from MES, I could then say release task if I want. Go into this bill of material, do other information, other activities as well. So I could say release task, complete the task inside of here. And I can accept it. I do have the higher level, so I want to make sure I do the entire structure, not just subcomponents or top levels. So I'm going to complete the task here. Say OK. And accept it. And say OK. So now in iBase-t, I have a proper M-bomb that's created from the structure with all the parts, the components, attribute information, and things like that that came across from 3DEXPERIENCE. So let's take a look at Clover for a moment. And I said that when in Clover, it's based on what we call plugins. Some of them are standard events, or some are standard that come with the Clover platform, and some are custom. This particular one was a custom one that is from ENOVIA to Solumina new bomb plugin. Okay, so when I look at that, it will have all kinds of events and tasks and things like that. Now, if I have an ENOVIA one, this is a standard one that comes with the library. You'll notice that there's methods, and under the methods, it's either enabled or not enabled. And here's the method name. And with each one of the methods, I now have parameters. Right, so each parameter has its types and things like that, and all this is because of the import of the DLL or the thing that you created. You wrap it, you create a wrapper for it, and you import it into Clover, depending on whether system you write it in and things like that. you can import your own custom plugins and things like that as well. So each one of these comes with it. So if I look at get engineering item by ID, right? So it gets the information there, get engineering items, right? So each thing has parameters, methods, things like that as well. So it has its own GUID, right? So as I go back and I start looking at task plans, you'll see that the one that I created for add new BOM, I added this demo delay just so that it would not go so fast, because it would blow by all the steps too quickly and I wouldn't be able to switch over. But you see, I can create all these different steps and things like that. So if I look at this one, and the interface is really easy, I could just move things around. Once I have it built, I can just move things around, and I can say, come in here and say new, and I could say IO directory or file get exists, see if a file exists or whatever. So I can pull from the methods or the library items, the different plugins, and insert them into my task plan if I wanted to. So let's look at one of the events, my task queue. I know that there's a couple in here. See this one, it had an error. A complete resulted false. So it didn't process, and if I see the error message, if I select it, I can see the error or the payload that was there, and I can determine what was wrong. You know, and if there's let's say it's a password issue, I could just edit it in the input parameters here and just say rerun it without having to go back to the other system and reprocessing all the data. That's the beauty of having everything run from inside of Clover as a hub and spoke method. And again, as I mentioned, I have multiple servers, and I could set it up so that when certain workloads get to a certain point, spawn another server process and run other use other servers or methods, things like that, to take workload off of it, things like that. Well, now let's take a look at some of the things what type of endpoints we can have in Clover. So the different type of adapters can be APIs, they can be web services through SOAP, REST, database connectors, ODBC, JDBC, ADO-DB. We can work with MES buses with like BizTalk, MuleSoft, others. Active Directory, LDAP servers, structured data files, XML, JSON, FTP servers, and things like that. So pretty much anything that is needed, we can connect with or create kind of adapters for every kind of thing that you need. And with that, I want to thank everybody for joining me during all these webinars. I'll open it up for questions, and thank you very much.
Great, that was a nice demo, Kip. Thank you for that. If you just flip up the question slide, that would be great. All right, so now we're going to open it up to questions. I know that was an involved demo. I'm sure there's some questions out there, so please put them in the questions panel, and we'll start sorting through those as we go. I do have one to start us off with, and that is, can you send events from MES back to PLM?
Yeah, so the way Clover works is, you can write plugins or methods from any system to any system. So we actually have a demonstration where in Solumina, you can create a disposition and it will create a change request inside of 3DEXPERIENCE. So absolutely, you can send data back and forth between the two systems.
Great. Another question here from Mike. Is the hub and spoke architecture communication asynchronous or synchronous?
Do you want to take that, Kip, or you want me to?
Do you want to take it?
Sure. In the case that Kip was showing today, it was asynchronous communication, so it doesn't, one of the downfalls of point-to-point integration is it's synchronous and it has to happen. There's no opportunity to capture errors or to reprocess things. So The hub and spoke architecture we showed today is asynchronous communication.
Okay, great. Tim's got a question here. Can you refresh the feature you demoed by be automated, or is it only manual? You might have missed that in the presentation. So the refresh feature you demoed, is it automated or is it only manual?
Right, right now it's manual. It's in the roadmap to auto. So it's a good question because I hate to have to do refresh, but typically you're not just staring at the screen all the time just to kind of watch it. One of the things I don't know that I pointed out is that if there's an error, you could have a task that says go send emails or alert somebody or something like that. So, but right now it is manual, but it is in the roadmap to make that refresh automatic.
Okay, great. Question from Jeff. Did the occurrence IDs associated with the occurrence-based bill of materials come over from ENOVIA to Solumina?
Did the bill of material structure come from ENOVIA into Solumina?
Do the occurrence IDs associated with the occurrence-based BOM come over from ENOVIA to Solumina?
Yeah, so it knows the internal IDs when it was passed from ENOVIA to Solumina.
Okay. Let us know if that answers your question, Jeff. Can you combine data from multiple systems to generate distribution packages?
Sure. Yeah, so it may be that in my MES I have a doc, or in my ERP I have a document, or other places Clover has some other technology to where I can generate a PDF or other documents from multiple sources, combine those, and maybe create a package that gets sent out, or pull data from multiple systems and combine them into one document and then send it to another place. So absolutely can.
I think, Kip, what you were referring to, that's collected, right, for creating like a technical data package.
Correct. Yep. Collect it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that clarification, Mike. Can the hub and spoke approach combine cloud and on-premise integration?
It absolutely could. Yeah, so as long as there's communication or access or APIs or methods to connect to it, it can connect to any systems.
Okay, great. You mentioned being able to add development or a test environment. Can these be run in parallel to production?
Yeah, so, kind of if you want to test out a process, not everybody's got a fully functioning development box or different things like that. So, or they want to spin off things from a real world test environment or test, when that event came into Clover, because I can spawn multiple different tasks, I might create a task plan that says, hey, go create this, and then send something to another dev environment and do some testing on some real live data, or depending on how critical it is, that you test with current information and things like that. So absolutely, you can.
Great, thank you. All right, got one more question here. What technologies are being used for interfacing PLM to MES?
Do you want to take that one, Mike?
Sure. So the technologies we showed today was clearly we're using the PLM technology, the MES technology, and then the messaging or the communication technology, which is Clover. In addition to that, we use C# and the respective APIs to write the endpoints to those to whatever endpoints we want to communicate in our hub and spoke architecture.
Great. All right, I'm just gonna ask one more time. Anyone have any more questions? Just please put them in the questions panel. Anything you want Kip to show you again? Take a minute and do that. All right, I'm not seeing anything come in, Kip, so I think that will close us out for the questions and answers. If anyone has any questions for Kip, make sure you feel free to contact him and follow up directly. We'll be happy to answer those questions offline with you if you have questions about Clover and how this integration was set up. We do want to mention one more thing. Our next event that we're scheduled for is for March 27th. We're going to be talking about enterprise change management. So there's a lot to unpack in that topic. I might even be a two-part topic, but we'll be sending out information to everyone here about that in the next couple of days. And also, we did record this, so we will be sending this recording out as well. That should be in your inboxes in the next 24 to 48 hours. With that, I thank you, Kip. Thanks for a great presentation, and thanks, Mike, for helping with some Q&A.
Thank you very much.
And we'll close out and enjoy your afternoon. Thanks so much.